Hello, my name is back to another Fabulous channel. I'm Jay from J Books Corner, and today we are doing my January wrap up, where we have a whole selection of books to talk about. Oh, what we got? I'll show you. We're gonna at least be talking about all of these today in my wrap up. I don't really know how to do a thumbnail with big books. I haven't had to do it in so long, and there are some that I don't personally own either, so we'll go through some of those. All right, before we get started, I do want to mention the channel is going through some changes, and also I do have a self promo. Let's start with the self promo. I know some people are annoyed by it. I'm assuming people are, just because like I'm promoting myself, but I have to do it. I'm a writer, I'm an author, I gotta promote my shit. I want to come here and do a little bit of a self promo. This is what's going on all the videos. So hi, how you guys doing? How's that Jacob? Is he doing good? I hope so. But being said, let's talk about Gunshot Residue. Starts off this trilogy. We have P49, which is the second book in this trilogy. And we also have Mr. St. James, which is the final book in this trilogy. All three books are available on Kindle Unlimited. All three books are wide, so you can buy them anywhere if you don't believe in Amazon. However, the ebook is exclusive to Amazon. I will review the loglines for all three. However, we'll go into a little bit more detail what the first one's about, because you have to read this one to be able to read these ones, you know what I mean? But let's first go through the loglines. Loglines are simply just like the top part right here. I'm not going to read you any of this, just this. So the first one is your husband's secrets enough to shatter your world, which I feel like is a pretty good theme for the book. The second one, which is this one, is what are you really capable of? And then the third one, which is this one, is how far are the bounds of love? Essentially, this follows an already married couple, Alex and DeMarcus. They are currently going through some marital problems at the beginning of this book. They've been together for 5 years, and Alex strongly believes that his husband is cheating on him. He just has this feeling. There's other people in his life that are kind of instigating him towards this realization as well, and so he takes it upon himself to figure out if his husband's actually cheating on him or not. And he actually warns that there's a bigger conspiracy mystery going on that overspans 3 different books that has to do with his husband. Once again, they are already married. These are spicy romantic suspense novellas. They're very short and they're very fast paced, so you can read them very quickly. That's all I got for you. I love them, but I wrote them, so I'm biased. That being said, jump back to a Jacob in whatever video you're watching. Thank you. I am doing all right today. Thank you, Jacob. Wasn't exactly the win I was hoping for today, but it wasn't like a failure either. Going forward, wrap-ups are going to change a little bit as well. Because of how I'm restructuring my channel, at least the hope is, I'm thinking that the wrap-ups will only talk about the books I don't end up vlogging and or talking about on the channel during that month. I'm not 100% sure if this is going to be the case or not. I will probably still go through all of my books because that's what I do, but you might get full-length reviews for books that I didn't talk about in full capacity on the channel. We'll see how it goes, but I just want to talk about that before we jump into it. We are going to go in the order that I read these in, so from like the first of the month to the 31st of the month is the order that we're going to go through. I will have to say I did read an entire, like, the back end of a series, and so if there are sequels or anything that I talk about, we'll talk about the whole series as a whole. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Let's start with my first book of the year, which I did vlog, so that video right there. And this is 3030 and Forever Alone. 3030 and Forever Alone follows Ricky as she is alone. She's having a hard time figuring out who to date, who to love, who loves her. The whole 9 yards. It's been a bit of a mess for her, and she ends up meeting Greed at a wedding. They have a spicy-ish one night together. At this wedding, things almost take a more sexual turn, and they end up having parting ways, realizing they're cross-country. This book deals with relationships. It also has to deal with family integral politics, some workplace drama, and also in that family stuff I would recommend triggers and stuff. And there's a tad bit of magical realism is all I'll say. If the magical realism didn't exist, this would have been a 5-star for me personally, but it was a 4.75 because of the magical realism. Then let's jump into that series I was just talking about. I read 9 volumes of Demon Slayer. This is 8 of them, or 7 of them. And then I read 2 other ones that I read on my Kindle. They were all 5 stars. It's detailing the very end of this series, and I will have a video coming out in the next month or so. I'm not entirely sure when it's going to come out, but we'll get around to it, I promise, where we're going to detail my experience while reading Demon Slayer from the very beginning to the very end. I will have to say some pre-context going into this is that I had already knowledge of the lore, the series, the characters, as I'd watched the entire TV show in like 3 weeks, went and saw the brand new movie when it came out, and that's the reason why I decided to binge read the rest of the manga, was because the movie ends on a cliffhanger, if you did not know, if you've not seen Mini Castle. And I need the sequels, like, immediately. Oh my god, it's like a necessary. Okay, Demon Slayer. Next one we're going to talk about is Tough Guy. I only read one of these this month, which is sad. I should have probably made my way through them. This is the 3rd book in Game Changers. This is a sequel after Heated Rivalry. This follows Ryan and Fabian. Fabian is he's the more feminine one on the picture. Ryan is the hockey player. He is essentially he has extreme anxiety while he's playing hockey, and he's realizing that he probably wants to like retire from the game. And so he ends up dating someone who Fabian has very strong like plies into hockey. His family basically is. This is kind of like a childhood friends to lovers in a way. Fabian and Ryan knew each other from when Ryan lived with Fabian during the time period like when he was training for hockey in high school. They like taking a hockey player if it's like that big of a school type of thing, and this was them. They almost had a few moments when they were teenagers, but they both were like, nope, not gonna talk about this. And now they meet later on in life, and it's their romance. I gave it a 4. I still continue to feel uncomfortable with certain sex scenes that Rachel Reed produces, but the book itself is solid, and I would recommend. I like to say outside of the first book, which is Game Changer, the rest of the series so far, I'm on book 5, I think, has been really, really good. And I know a lot of people have problems with The Long Game, which is the next book, which is the sequel to Heated Rivalry, and so I'm curious to see why people have problems with that book. I'm really excited to get back into Eli and Shane's book. Also, I want to know, like, I'm gonna, in that video, because I will have this whole video talking about Game Changers, I do wonder if I'm gonna talk about orders that I think you should read this in, because I personally don't think this is a series so far that needs to be read in publication order. Like, the fact that Game Changers definitely should be a prequel, I'm not getting into this tangent here because it's not needed. Okay. Next book I reread was People Being on Vacation by Emily Henry. This is Emily Henry's second chance romance. These two people, Poppy and Alex, meet in college, and they end up going on vacations together over 6 years, and now it's like 7 years, 8 years later. They've had a 2-year sabbatical of not talking to one another because of reasons we don't know, and they end up going to this wedding together to reconnect while also supporting like the person who's getting married, and it's about their romance, and I fucking adored it. I gave it a 5-star. I also did an in-depth analysis on both the book and the movie. In case you want to see that video, I'll link it over there as well when the movie came out in January. The next one was one I was looking forward to so much, and it was not a win. I was Knock Knock opened by Neil Sharpton. I like to say the narrator's voice is beautiful in this, and I do like Irish Wales type of accents that's going on. Very, very good. However, it was hard to differentiate between the two stories going on. So we have Enid, who is basically being tortured for her life, and then we also have Betty Fitzpatrick and also Aisling Marlin as they're investigating something for college. The Aisling and Betty story is very queer, it's very sapphic, everything I kind of wanted from the story, and then Enid's storyline is just fine. It adds the horror elements to it, of course, and it adds a little bit more murky or subject matter. The atmosphere is pretty good too, but there's just something about it that just didn't work for me. I went on a 3-star. And then we also have, there's this other thing I just talked about, I just read in synopsis, but I'm not gonna mention it here. That's kind of like a overlying character throughout the entire thing, and I'm realizing I just don't like it in books. This is not an exception. So I gave it a 3. I would have a hard time recommending it because it's so weird and it goes in such a weird place that I don't think it's gonna be for everybody. Then I had to post my 25 and 25 TBR die video, and so I had to finish and read The Rat Picker King by Cassandra Clare. I read this in like a day. It was a fever dream. It's huge. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. However, I retained very little of its knowledge. Not gonna lie, this was basically like in year 1 out, but I just know I had a great time, and it was definitely a 5. I do not regret that decision. So I will be rereading it in the next month or so to get a whole video talking about this in the first book in the series, because I ended up really, really liking them. Then I read Tell Me It's Right, is Gracie and her brother's best friend. This is Gracie and Lean's book. Essentially, Gracie is a character that was in Terry, which is the anti-relationship year by the same author, by K.A. Weismer. However, this is the first book in the Sweet Spire series, which is the small town this book takes place in. So you don't have to read that one to read this one. However, there is a reference to that main character. It's just like, it's like cool. Like, oh, interconnected, you know, type of thing. Gracie's moving back home from she's a freshman, and Terry, she plays a very small role in this book. She's graduated from college, she's moving back home, she's trying to find a job, she's trying to move forward in life. I'm going to be honest with you, she's trying to do something with her life. All of her friends seem like they're doing something, and so she lies and says that she has this amazing job, this amazing boyfriend, and in reality she's working at a tattoo parlor with Liam Brooks, which is a crush she had on as a kid because it's her brother's like best friend, and they end up in an unlikely relationship, and there was just something about it that was missing. Like, I loved almost all the elements since Gracie is a character that I enjoyed, I was excited to read more from. I think her relationship is beautiful. Also, this has one thing in it that I feel like more books should start to adapt to. I think we should be playing with the structure, what makes a romance, and there are a few tropes that make a romance I would like to see die. And this book is starting the train to make them die. I'm sure there's lots of other books that do the same thing. If you know what I mean, you know what I mean. And that's great. This is Kay Weismer's spice, which means that it is very graphic. Very little of them. There's probably like 2 or 3 spicy scenes in this entire book, and they do pertain to the last like 30 or 40%. So I get that's the reason why you're picking up a book. This is not the book for you. However, that's not why I would recommend Katie Weismer as an author. However, I do think this was missing some of the Katie Weismer edge that I like in her novels. Even with Terry, which I would think is a bit lighter, is dealing with some pretty heavy topics as well. And this one is dealing with heavier topics. However, there isn't, I don't know, there was something about it that was like, I wanted more. So I landed on a 4.5. I still really liked it. I still really loved it. And I'm not sure yet if I'm going to review them or not past this at this point of review. I was tempted to. I will be reading Tell Me It's Wrong, and I will continue on in the series as well. So I read that. And then, because I'm reading and watching new Percy Jackson on the channel, I decided to pick up Wrath of the Goddess. I just really need to, or the Wrath of the Triple Goddess. This is the second book in the Senior Year Adventures. I read this back in September of the year it came out in 2024, just 2 years ago, which is what I thought, but that seemed like a long time ago, but it's true. And I hated it. I gave it a 2.5. I did not like it. I just don't like Percy as a main character. I think Percy looks like is really great as a side character in other projects. I enjoy when I see him in other projects, but him in first person is just so infuriating to read from. And the fact that he is supposed to be a senior here, he's doing this for senior credits. That's all I can basically say about the series. This is a sequel series to Percy Jackson. It's also a sequel series to the entire thing. It's also, I want to say, is the furthest in timeline in the Percy Jackson cinematic universe of the Half-Blood Chronicles. And so there's parts of it that I don't like. I will have a full spoiler review or a review of sorts coming out for this book, as I've reviewed every other book in the Percy Jackson world, and I didn't review it when I read it because I hated it so much. I was like, nah, I think we're done. But I do want to read the new one, so I'll review it. You're welcome. It's gonna be a little ranty. I hope that's okay. Then I read Boomtown, which was a book I was so anticipating. Boomtown's by Nick Stone. Nick Stone is a YA author. This is their adult thriller debut. It says, Gone Girl meets P-Valley, Nick Stone's adult debut about 2 missing erotic dancers from Atlanta's most notorious gentlemen's club and the woman committed to finding them. Eventually, these 2 women go missing, and there's a woman who ends up getting entangled in the drama of it all due to some money being stolen, and she has to figure it out or her life is in danger. And I just it was pretty close to it. It was a very safe book. There are some really, really intense things being talked about, and I do like the exploration of what we're going through with the characters, and I think the characters are really, really well written. And I do think there's parts of the later part of the book that I enjoyed more than the first part, but there was not enough clear oh no, that's not true. I just didn't like a lot of the resolution, I guess. That's the best way. I know, 3.5. I would probably recommend. It's not horrible, so I would probably recommend. Then I read Immaculate Conception, Ling Ling Hong, I think. This is a story. Oh my god, I've had a hard time talking about this. This is a story that took me for a ringer. I'm reading this for a 5-book video that you'll see in February, and so I'll have a little bit more thoughts and opinions there. This is a story that follows 2 best friends as they're going through a very toxic relationship. Essentially, they meet in art school. One of them is into technological art. One of them is more into presentations and putting on a show, doing a whole exhibit about themselves, and a deep dive into what they are. And essentially, in the story, they are exploring the idea how AI generative art is taking over in the art community, because you can say to Grok, the Twitter AI or ChatGPT or whatever, make me a painting that looks like Picasso, and then it'll make you a painting like Picasso. People are going and throwing that into copyright, and so now this painting that looks so much like a different painting now is the owner of the looks and the likeness of it all. And there's a whole website dedicated to it in this book. I don't know if that's a thing in real life, but I'm assuming it could be. So we're having artists send for their lives because their work is literally being taken from them. If they do this, they get sued, and it can cost a lot of money, and essentially the school basically says, we can't fund you. So we're dealing with someone who is kind of working against that because they don't work in a medium that it affects. However, they are becoming super mega famous. And then we are dealing with someone who is getting affected by this and who is working in a medium that it does affect. However, wanting to play with that medium as well. And they're also playing with some other technological feats. This book is for horror. It is a literary horror. I would say this is more literary fiction than horror. And there's a spice of horror. That's how I would describe it. I will will have to say as well that by the end, it was truly terrifying if some of this stuff does come to be, and I would never want this on our soul. That's all I can really say about it without spoilers. I do think the synopsis, I think everything else gives away too much information though. So if any of that sounded really interesting to you, I really didn't have a good time reading it, I'm not gonna lie. However, I did feel like the payoff was kind of worth it. I gave it a 3.75. Then, I'm not gonna lie to you, I am reading Tomb Raider. They just released a brand new comic that takes place after the events of Underworld. All I'll say about it is that I'm giving it a 3.5. It's the first issue. I will read the second one when it comes out later on. Then I read Free For All. Free For All is a graphic novel that takes place in a futuristic time. I don't think it's out yet. This is by Patrick Hovarth, who wrote a book that I did recommend last year, The Place Beyond the Trees, which I really enjoyed, so I was kind of looking forward to this. And this was not a win for me. This was a I would say it's like a 3.25, maybe even a 3. This is a futuristic world where you basically put billionaires up in a gladiator-style arena, and they have a choice to either donate half of their sum to like non-profitable charities and stuff to people in need, or they can fight to the death, and whoever wins gets to keep the money. But we have someone in here who's kind of cheating the system a little bit and has won 20 times, and so they're just racking up change. And so it's all about what that looks like and why people are getting together. We're going to talk about the Jana Ivanovic, which was Kings of Ransom. This was a book that I read because I really enjoyed the first book in the series, which is The Recovery Agent, I think is what the first one's called. This is like a Tomb Raider spin, like a ripoff. The first one was a Tomb Raider ripoff. This doesn't feel like anything like that whatsoever. The second one follows our main character Gloria as she is hunting for several different objects, mostly dealing with Egypt, and we're having a character who's tied to her ex-husband's past come in, and she has to help them, and essentially that's what the book is about. And I had a terrible time with it. I gave it like a 2.25. I did not like it, and I will not continue on with the series. Then we had a 5-star prediction I did read this month, which is Half His Age by Jet McCurdy. This is a deeply uncomfortable and like very unsettling novel. This follows a girl named who ends up in a relationship with her teacher, her English teacher. It's very point blank what the book is about. And it's about all these different relationships interacting with one another, and how one person in your life can detrimentally change your entire life. It's about female rage. It's about female empowerment. It's about sex engagement. It is about uncomfortability for sure. It's about grooming. It's about the different stages of grooming and how it can look on the outside and on the inside, how it does to one's character. There's a lot going on here, and there's a lot of deeper conversation. However, there's one particular message I don't think is handled as well as the rest of the book is. So I gave it a 4.75. I would cautiously recommend it because it's so graphic, but I do think there's a point to it, so it's a mixed bag. Another book that I read for that video was Futbolista by Johnny Grazavilla. This was a 5-star read. I fucking adored this book. I'm so excited for you guys to see my experience while reading it. Futbolista follows Gabby and also Vale. Actually, like a portion of this novel follows Gabby as he is a straight guy going off to college. He's going to go play soccer or football in this case, and he ends up meeting Val at a party. He's going there to go meet up with this girl that he's kind of sleeping with, and they end up kissing, and he's like, this is the best kiss of my entire life. What the fuck's happening to me? And then he has this other person who's non-binary, who's on the team, who is basically being like, I think you're bisexual. And he's like, I don't think I'm bisexual. And it's all about the discovery of everything, and he ends up in a situationship with this character. However, some part of me, like, they're promoted, so like I'm gonna talk about them because I love them. However, I will have to say that their relationship, like their relationship doesn't happen until it's a very slow burn book. But I fucking adored it. I loved everything about it. It's exactly the type of romance that I love, so I'm happy that I got to it. Then I read Fish and Water. This is a manga. I don't know when it's coming out, but I would recommend it, especially if you're into those cozy types. This is extremely cozy. This follows two guys as they're going through COVID together. Essentially, they're friends. I can't fully remember the reason why they became friends, but they're friends, and they end up inviting each other over to their houses to watch movies and make dinner and do all these things, and it's their slow burn romance. I wanted more from this, and so I gave it a 4.25, I think is what it was. I just wanted like 50 pages longer. I feel like I would have gave it a 5. Then I read You're All Mine Tonight. This is a BL manga. This is a spicy BL. These are the adult ones. I picked this up because it was spicy. There's really no reason for it. And this follows a man who fell in love with his callboy, and then his callboy ends up leaving. They are in like a 3 or 4 year relationship back and forth, who he is paying, who he has deeply of romantic feelings for, and he ends up, like, the cowboy ends up leaving, and then he ends up seeing someone who looks a lot like him, who has a different name, dream, whole 9 yards, and it's about their unlikely relationship, and it's extremely sexual. I gave it a 3 just because I've read this before. Not this particular book, but I read the same concept before, and I've seen it done way better, so it just didn't live up to other ones that I've read. Then I read Nobody's Baby. This comes out in March. This is the second book in the Murder by Memory series. A phenomenal book. If you want to hear my thoughts on the first one, I'll link you over to this video, as I did vlog it. Nobody's Baby follows our main character as there is a baby on board. There's not supposed to be any babies on board. This takes place in a universe where they're on a ship. The ship has multiple different colonies and stuff. However, they're being reborn every 30 years by these books that translate onto your mind. You have to go and log your memories and stuff, and you get reborn into these bodies essentially, and you can live forever while they're going to this different planet to seek future and seek health. But it takes a very long time to get there, and these people didn't go into hyperspace. They just decided to rewrite their brains, and so there's families that are going through all these things. However, you cannot have babies, you cannot have any of these things because it breaks the law of protocols, and this baby ends up aboard this ship essentially. Her nephew ends up being in the hands of this, and she's trying to figure out whose baby it is, why it happened, and the logistics behind it. I fucking adored this. This is the definition of a cozy fantasy that is up my alley. I gave it a 4.5. In my opinion, there are a few other things, because this book is more than just a cozy fantasy, that I didn't care for. But the cozy fantasy, oh my god, give me, if anybody reads this book when it comes out, or if they get it early, if you read it and you're like, these are the elements that I know and love, and you have recommendations, please give them to me. I would love to read those. And then lastly, I read Beautyland by Maureen Helen Bertino. This is also for that 5-book video that you'll be seeing in the month of February. So Maureen Helen Bertino is someone who I think is a very talented writer. This follows a woman who ends up being injured as a small child and ends up almost dying and then coming back to life, and who can transport her thoughts and feelings to the alien culture. And it follows her for a very long time. And this is another book where I'm like, this is a sci-fi literary fiction, where it's mostly literary fiction. And I would barely say it's sci-fi, in my opinion. At least the other book that I read this month that was horror literary fiction, ironically for the same video, I didn't realize that, was at least horror by the end. This is not, in my opinion. I don't give anything away. I think the characters are really well written. I think there's a lot about humanity that's really interesting to talk about and described. However, I don't want to give my rating away because it's low, and so I think it's more fun. I'm going to say it's a 2. I'm going to bleep it, and then you can, if you want to read my lips, you can read my lips. Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you about it, but I had some interesting thoughts and opinions on it. With that being said, those are the 20-something books I read this month. 28 books, I think. And let me know what you guys read in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.